Hello and welcome. Let's talk about a huge problem that pretty much every modern business is facing. We're all drowning in data, but we're starving for actual insight. In this explainer, we're going to lay out a super clear blueprint for turning that data overload into a real powerful strategic advantage. So, let's dive right in.
Picture this. You've probably been in this meeting, right? The head of sales asks what seems like a simple question. But in most companies, a question like this sends entire teams scrambling for days, digging through endless reports and dashboards. The honest truth is, getting a fast, reliable answer is way harder than it should be. And that really gets us to the big paradox of our time. We have more data than ever before. I mean, think about it. Tons of Excel files, complex dashboards, multiple reporting systems, all churning away. And yet, we're often insight poor. We're struggling to answer the most basic, fundamental questions about our own business.
Now, why does fixing this matter so much? Well, this number right here. This is the key. According to research from Gartner, organizations that really nail this and implement intelligent decision-making systems can see up to a 30% jump in operational efficiency. I mean, that's not just a small improvement, that's a massive competitive edge. So, how do we get there? You might think the answer is more technology, right? But it's not. It's actually about a fundamental shift in how we think about data in the first place.
So, here's where the rubber really meets the road. The common mistake, the wrong approach, is to just keep building more and more complex dashboards, hoping they'll magically give us the answers. The smart approach, though, it starts by asking a totally different question. What are the critical decisions we actually need to make every week, and which numbers are going to change how we make them? It's a game changer.
And this brings us to this idea of strategic KPIs. Instead of just tracking what's easy to measure from the data we have, we focus on what truly matters to the business. This whole idea is rooted in a really solid, proven management tool called the Balanced Scorecard, which basically helps companies line up their day-to-day actions with their big strategic goals. In short, you measure what actually drives the business forward.
Okay, so we've shifted our thinking, which is the first huge step. Now let's get into the how. Let's see how AI can act as a super powerful assistant to make all this happen.
Now, when we hear AI, it's easy to think of, robots taking over jobs or some crazy complex tech. But in this context, AI's role is way more practical and down to earth. Just think of it as a smart assistant, an invisible tool that's working in the background to help you and your team make better, faster, and way more confident decisions.
So what does this assistant actually do? Well, it's not about complicated coding. It just performs some very specific high-value tasks. For example, it can summarize key trends, telling you something simple like, hey, sales grew 12% in the North. It can also detect anomalies, like a sudden drop in website traffic that you need to know about right now. And it can even provide some short-term forecast to help you see what's coming around the corner.
And here is an absolutely critical point. You do not need to rip out and replace all your existing systems. That's the old way of thinking. The smart way to do this is through gradual integration, just pulling only the necessary data from the systems you already have to answer those key questions we talked about earlier. No massive disruption needed. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The data totally backs this up. Just look at this chart. Digital transformation projects that use a gradual integration approach have a way higher success rate. We're talking around 65%. Now compare that to the risky all-or-nothing full system replacement, which only succeeds about 23% of the time. The evidence is pretty clear. Evolution totally beats revolution here. Of course, you might be thinking, garbage in, garbage out, right? And that's true. None of this works with bad data. But the goal isn't to spend a fortune chasing some mythical idea of perfect data. AI-driven tools can help clean the data just enough, handling duplicates, fixing inconsistencies, to build a foundation of trustworthy data that your managers can actually rely on.
So, what's the big payoff? When you make this shift, the benefits aren't just in one little area. By using that balanced scorecard framework we mentioned earlier, we can actually see how this creates what I like to call a four-way win across the entire organization. The balanced scorecard gives you this amazing, holistic view of success by looking at four key areas. First, you've got the traditional financial bottom line. Second is the customer perspective. How do our customers see us? Third is the efficiency of our internal processes. And finally, and this one's huge, is our capacity for learning and growth. A true win has to deliver across all four of these. And the impact here is incredibly tangible. Financially, you reduce operational costs, which is always good.
For customers, better insights can lead to as much as 20% revenue growth through things like personalization. And for your internal processes, automating all that reporting means manual errors can get pretty close to zero. These are real, measurable wins you can take to the bank.
But for me, all those numbers are great, but this quote, this captures the most powerful benefit of all, the human one. This is all about that learning and growth piece. When you empower your employees with instant, reliable answers, you don't just make them more efficient, you make them more motivated, more independent, and just plain better at their jobs.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but how do you actually make it happen in the real world? This final section is all about that. It's a clear, practical blueprint for getting started.
The key, and I can't stress this enough, is a gradual, phased approach. Phase 1, start small. Pick a pilot team to test the concept and get a quick win on the board. Phase 2, adjust. Get feedback from that team and fine-tune the system. Phase 3, expand. Once you've proven the value, you can scale it to more teams with total confidence. And finally, Phase 4 is autonomy, where you empower teams to use and even adapt the system themselves. This step-by-step method is all about low risk and high adoption.
It is also so crucial to manage expectations. AI isn't a magic wand. And most importantly, we have to maintain transparency and human control. The system is there to make suggestions, to provide insights, but the final strategic decisions, those always rest with people.
And finally, the results. Let's talk about the return on investment, because honestly, these numbers are staggering. We're talking about an 80 to 90% reduction in the time it takes just to prepare reports, a 67% reduction in data errors. Look, these aren't minor tweaks. This is a fundamental transformation of how work gets done.
So as we wrap up, the big takeaway here is really clear. In a world where data is just growing exponentially, this isn't just a cool technical upgrade. It's a strategic necessity. The real question isn't if your organization should start this journey, it's how wisely you will begin.